Welcome back, everybody, to the Xpand podcast. This is your host, Zarin Beatty, with a beautiful human being right here. You're smiling already. We are here in Austin, Texas still for the Aubrey Marcus Fit for Service Mastermind. Kaveh Kavoosi, how are you, man?
I'm great, brother. Thank you for having me.
Dude, this is excellent. You have been such a genuine person to be around this entire weekend. And even in the Zoom calls, even in just your messages into the platform, everything, man, I've been able, you can only feel about somebody so much through the internet, but you've really brought it, man. Like, you've showed up here, and not to put anybody else out, but you've been one of the more genuine people that I've met here. And maybe it's just because we can relate in a very different aspect or in a very unique way for the both of us, And that for me it's special, dude. It's special to relate to the people around us and in that deeper, beautiful ways. It means a lot to me as a person, and I know you're a good dude, and I know this is going to be a beautiful episode for our entire platform, man.
Well, I really appreciate the words. It's beautiful to hear someone articulate appreciations that you may be sometimes hoping for or having acknowledged by others. Sometimes when you're posting, on a platform that can be as beautifully connecting, but ultimately impersonal in the feeling that you get outside of the connection or the integration that you make with the app or the product that we're using, it can leave this little space, and it's nice to be here to experience the context that's been the content that's been shared up to this point, but then to hear it articulated and appreciated in your words, it's really appreciated. Thank you, brother.
You're beyond welcome, dude. You happen to express that this is your first podcast ever, and I'm honored, man. Godzi had me on for my first podcast ever, so this is a cool moment. This is, in a sense, a way for me to pay it forward, or whatever term you want to use for that, but just relay now, like, we have a platform to share and meet new people and grow, man. And so you are, just kind of get into it, you're an MD, and we'll get more into how you would describe it, but from what I've seen from you, man, like, you're very well aware with relationships and psychology and like how we mentally, even unconsciously, protect ourselves, and how we kind of stay where we're comfortable, and just like this inner language that makes so much sense from somebody who experiences similar things, but to have like proven words that are attached to like the description, it's really beautiful to see your knowledge, man, and to really be able to speak with you for an hour right now. So kind of what is your background with medicine, whether it's mental or physical?
All right. Well, I love that question because we always identify often people with, when we're meeting someone, it's hello, how are you? What do you do? Right? And now we've given this person a credit, and we make an association with the career that they have chosen to go into, and we put them somewhere in a do we trust them or not category. And physicians, MDs, have a particularly privileged role in society where we give so much credit right away.
Interesting.
But is that credit really, do they really deserve it? And I want to say in general, yes, but I'm a human. You're a human. This is just a career path I chose. And a part of me wonders, did I choose that career path? But we can get into that. But life happened. And life happens to all of us, and how do we respond to it? You either adapt or die, or you adapt, you freeze, or you regress. And for me, I think life presented a lot of challenges that invoked reflection from a young age. And one of my earliest questions that I asked myself as a kid was, what is the most valuable thing I'm going to ever own? And I would ask others this, and I would ponder that question. And it didn't take until I started feeling a bump on the side of my neck that was getting hard. And I went to a doctor. This was when I was about 20. And I asked him, like, hey, what is this? He said, it's just a cyst. Let it go. So I trusted him. We trust the words of these people that we hold in high regard, right? And he'd been my physician for 10 years. It started getting harder. And I go to another doctor. And again, he repeats the same thing. So again, my system of trust acknowledges that, and I move forward. A month and a half later, my left face is starting to not move the same speed as my right side of my face. And I asked the third doctor, can you please tell me what this is? And then he said it's the exact same thing as the first two doctors. And I said, please confirm with a biopsy, because I can tell in my smiles in pictures that this is no longer, this isn't just a cyst. It can't be a cyst. Prove it. And I ended up getting a biopsy, and it said that it was a tumor in my parotid gland. And it rocked me. It shattered me. I was so disappointed in the system. I was so disappointed that I had put my trust into other people's individuals, and at the potential risk of my life, they could have been wrong, and they would have gone home. And the suffering that came from, and I would have suffered, and I did suffer. I got the diagnosis. I was told it was a type of tumor that can progress to malignancy, so the suggestion was excise the tumor, so take it out. And for 6 months, I beat the crap out of myself mentally. I felt these invasive thoughts of death coming in, and I protected myself in any way I could, and my initial outlet was poker. And every time I had an invasive thought, I'd go there, and poker would extinguish this pain, and that extinguishing felt beautiful. I didn't have to look at that fear. I didn't have to feel those feelings of a deadline that was coming in life. And it was interesting because at the same time, anxiety would present itself, and anxiety was my leading symptom when this fear of death would present itself. And I would keep extinguishing, and extinguishing felt so good. And I'm sure everyone who listens can relate that when we have something that's overbearing on our system, it's nice to turn the other way, or to tune it down, or soften it back with a drink. I eventually had my surgery 6 months later, and my GPA dropped. I had completely let go of school, and but I survived. And I told myself, I'm going into medicine to make sure that that type of sense that of not being seen by a physician never happens again. I realized at that point that this person held so much power that I held in such high regard that I trusted their word. And we have to be so careful with the approach that we have, and mindful about how it can land on someone. It makes me think of Don Miguel's 4 agreements of Toltec, where he says in the first, I think it's the first one, where you have to be impeccable with your word. So not only be impeccable, but also be mindful of how it can land on this person. But make sure that the information that you're sharing is actually coming true to you, not just because it feels right, but how can I make sure that this person leaves absolutely reassured? And that's been my philosophy in medicine ever since.
Damn. So, first of all, you are freaking legit. And it really does feel like that the people who become disappointed in the system, man, like, those are the people that produce the evolutionary results and responses to those scenarios that can be potentially harmful for the people to come. And that's legitimately why we started this platform. It's because I was disappointed in the level of information that I was receiving as a person, whether it was through meditation or fitness or plant medicine or like these other alternative ways of healing ourselves. You're like, we don't fucking hear about stuff like that. And this blew me away actually a few years ago when I first started working with On It. So I've done like all of their certifications, and I was a decade into fitness, and they humbled me, man. Like, they had such a different way of knowledge and being. It's like, why the fuck haven't I heard about this before? Like, I'm not a beginner in this field, yet this is stuff that I wish I knew a decade ago. So for me to know that and to hear more about plant medicine and be able to provide that to people, man, like, it's so beautiful to relate to you in that aspect. Just in our journey, I feel like a lot of people can relate to that. And even in your description here, you use the words extinguish and kind of what you spoke about yesterday on stage, which, thank you for your speech, by the way, it was phenomenal. Would you mind going into that part of your language and why you chose those words?
Sure. So the words that I was using on stage yesterday, it was actually great how Aubrey even gave me the opportunity. We had one of our colleagues in this Fit for Service fellowship that was up on stage, and she was expressing herself, and I looked at Aubrey and he looked at me, and I'm like, that's a protector. And he just smiled and laughed, and then a minute later he asks me to come on stage, and whoa, the system turns on. I'm going up on stage, and as I'm walking up, I'm expressing confidence, but there's a part of me that's within me that says, dude, what are you doing up there? You got social anxiety. You don't do well in front of people. You don't bring everything to the stage. And I asked that part. I said, look, I see why you feel that way. I acknowledge you. Why don't we address this after we have this? Because I have an important moment right now.
Whoa.
So
Damn.
I had this opportunity to engage with this part just prior to going up on stage. And he relinquished. He acknowledged he was seen, and he was able to soften back a little. And I was able to be present.
So, wow. How do you feel the difference is perceived and experienced in the internal world, and then also us watching you go up? Like, why are those two vastly different concepts and constructs? Because you looked pretty confident, and I could tell naturally, as most people on the planet would be, our breath gets out of sync a little bit when we're speaking. It's happened to me on a podcast before. It's like when we start to do those things that we don't really do energetically, and in a platform where people are listening, like, it's easy for us to kind of speak too much and not catch our breath.
Right.
But like you seem very comfortable.
Right.
So how do those two worlds, like, what does that mean?
What comes to mind is they're not different worlds. They're the same world, but it's your awareness of the world that this tool, internal family systems, brings to light, where the inner workings with your inner family that is ruminating, running, and wanting to express themselves wants to just be acknowledged and seen, and they're there on behalf of previous experiences that you've experienced that are similar to what you're about to engage with, and they're presenting themselves on behalf of that. And when you work through this process and you come to harmony with it, you're actually coming up on stage with an acknowledged part, and you're able to now express from what internal family systems calls yourself, where these parts are now acknowledged, and you can actually come there and show up, having had these parts that may have initially burdened you be absolved of those chains that they may have wanted to hold you back from. And then I was able to show up there. And so many other circumstances and opportunities that you are actually able to be there and not be there with the burden of these parts that are screaming at us to see them. And if you'd like me to share what it is, it's these, at its core, I shared up on stages, we have these traumas, and they can be something as simple as someone taking your water, but how it landed on your system, it has everything to do with it. And we protect ourselves in such a beautiful way in order to not re-experience that trauma. And then, unfortunately, in society, we've never really gained the tools to look within. We say, hey, deal with that later, look elsewhere, distract yourself, go get more busy, take on other roles. And there's no the opportunity to just turn your head and look within for that few seconds. But when you have when you give that opportunity, just like imagine an unacknowledged child where the parent is just continually walking forward on their cell phone. That child just wants that attention from mom, and mom may not give that for days, weeks, months, years, if ever. And those are these parts that are within us. And the way that child protects himself from not having mom see him, he may just act passive. He may look away. And what is looking away, being passive? we experience that as apathy and numbness potentially. And then day in and day out, the way that we protect ourselves are managed by what we collectively call our ego. What I feel on a lot of podcasts, we express ourselves as ego, but when you think that there are more than one part, there are how many? There's multiple. We just call it many minds or many parts within us. They're managed, and so the trauma, the protectors, and then the managers collectively give about 80 to 90% of your daily energy towards that. Think about how much energy we're expending towards these systems that are beautifully placed in order to protect us from re-experiencing that. And how beautiful it could be if by just acknowledging all levels and getting to the core, we can unburden our system and have more space available for the rest of life, for the rest of us to be here. Just to touch on two other aspects that I feel like I missed on stage yesterday, but I did it, I think, to invoke thought as opposed to give all the answers, was these firefighters, these tools that we use to extinguish. And we call them addictions or vices that we go engage with. And they are beautifully powerful. And going back to my tumor, poker was this beautiful tool for extinguishing the pain of the fear I had that I was unable to look into. Maybe I didn't have the tools. Maybe I was too fearful. But I'm certain now I didn't have the tool to actually look in properly. And I get why society has so much fear of looking inside, when that's where the magic happens. That's where we have this beautiful opportunity to have a system that operates in harmony with these parts and doesn't need the extinguishers, acknowledges the managers, acknowledges the protectors, and what's to come, what can be manifested from that place where you're trusting the universe in a place of harmony. From a place of harmony. A lot of words, I know. Sorry.
No, man, it was enough. It was enough words to paint the picture. And from me hearing it now twice from you and a little bit beforehand, you so eloquently flowed through that expression where you've pieced together every time that I've heard you talk about it in one expression. So that was such a beautiful way to kind of put it all out on the table now, for more discussion, for more questions. And I loved that you referred to these entities inside of you as the inner family, maybe subconsciously through that expression. And then you brought up the inner family systems. So you're treating these parts of you as if they are your family. And that registered, it clicked into place the way you said it. And what brought you in to working with that part of the mind, of the the unconscious presence inside of us? Was it an experience that you registered and it's there's something more here? I kind of want to help people get through this because I experienced this. And kind of what brought you down that path?
Well, working in the ER, we see a lot of patients, psychiatric patients, and they're one of the most available patients that you see that you can actually reflect on mental health. So we're thinking that way already. And when we have to have them cleared by psychiatry, you see a lot of bounce backs. So what are they really clearing? What therapies are they actually sending them to? And I reflected on it. I said, I would love to know which therapies are available to people. And I realized that the majority of them actually create tools for coping, not tools for actually addressing the core issue. And what that ends up doing is we have a system in place in so many domains of society where we're treating a symptom as opposed to treating the cause. What's their why? And the ER is this beautiful place where we can treat people, we can help people, and I feel like I'm of service daily. But I'm treating a symptom. What brought them there? And I start asking people this question. And in search of asking that why, I started to look within and say, if we're working in a system that is just giving people the tools to cope, how are we ever going to break the chains that are holding us back? And my cousin, this is the universe again, had been working with internal family systems for 3 years. His name is Timothy Sotoday, at Tim Infinite. I'm getting this podcast thing. And he had introduced this to me as an adjunct, so it was something that I could maybe explore a little bit further. And I did one session, and I said, wow, this would be incredible for patients, where they'd actually have an opportunity to actually go to their core. And then it struck a chord with me. I'm like, I could use this tool. I said, I now have an opportunity to look within at all of these parts of me that have been screaming, that have been unacknowledged for so long. And this isn't just available to me. This is actually available to everyone. And what a powerful tool it is to have the terminology, the understanding, and the applicability of these systems, these terms, and the way that they're applied, to actually come into harmony with your system. And when you start engaging with them, the way that this system has, this therapy has been, at least come into my awareness, from a place of pure compassion, pure curiosity, and no expectation, there's this intuitive insight that comes out of it that surprises me, who is this medical mind who used to just believe what I see factually. Now I'm trusting my system a lot more. And in trusting your system, that is like trusting a system, trusting your system on the inside. I don't know how else to define harmony anymore than that. And that's where I want to be operating from in my life.
Where did you really begin to feel that switch and that build of trust? Were you feeling it work? Were you feeling these deeper recognitions, and then you were seeing how it was kind of blending into your daily behavior?
It's a great question, because I started identifying protectors within myself. I started seeing it with everyone else, and so quickly you could remove the pathology of someone. I used this example yesterday that we call people liars, and it's a heavy burden to carry when we're meeting people, because now we don't trust them, and this person maybe identifies with this badge of I need to lie in order to get something. But if you take a step back, you remove the pathology by realizing their lying is actually a protective mechanism. It's a protector. What's it protecting them from? Something in their past had to have been so traumatic that they had to make up a story in order to protect themselves from the pain they experienced. And that protective mechanism has been carried forward in other domains of their life. And it's once you realize that, you actually show them so much more compassion and understanding. And that is so magical, where someone can do the worst thing that they could have ever done to you, but all they were actually doing was protecting their system. And their system prioritized themselves over you, and you can completely understand that. I hope.
This has been so deeply beautiful to hear you talk about and to feel you talk about, because I've literally experienced this form of therapy through plant medicine, through many different ceremonies, where we're able to like feel the process of the development of like the people around us, and get like deep insight on like where my parents came from, and like who taught them and how they were taught. And like you get into this perception on like this person has been built this way because of a series of like unfortunate events or fortunate events, depending on however you want to look at that, right. And myself included, and maybe that's where like that ability to express self-love to those like unknown parts in you that are just kind of parts in you because of the process. And I don't know if you've been to any ceremonies or anything like that, but we're in this fit for service group, man. I'm sure you've been around discussions at minimum. How do you feel like those two worlds kind of blend and connect?
Well, plant medicine has been my savior on many occasions prior to having any awareness of this type of systems analysis of your own inner workings. And there were times where I felt myself completely burning out, and then I would have a mushroom ceremony with friends, and when we were setting an intention, I put an inflection on the friends because a part of me said, hey, you were doing it for fun back then. But that was just a part of me, because now the other part acknowledges that I respect this medicine so much. And in 2014, I did a plant ceremony with a friend who had just come back from doing ayahuasca in Peru. And it was so incredibly profound. I felt these protectors and managers that I can now identify that were leading my life and just running me to the ground energetically and mentally have an opportunity to step back. And psilocybin, MDMA have this beautiful effect of getting portions of your system that are leading you, that protect you, and they do so with such beauty and grace, but also at the expense of your energy. MDMA comes from a place of compassion and gets that part to step back and soften back from this beautiful self essence. And self is something else that we definitely should touch on. But especially, actually, this might be the right time, where self is this energy that exists within all of us. It's a non-judgmental, expectationless, beautiful essence that just has pure love, and it is within all of us. And when you do engage in plant medicine or MDMA or ketamine, from my personal experience, self shows up and gracefully asks the managers and protectors to step back, and you're able to be with that traumatic part of you. And on one of my journeys, I had this beautiful insight that says, wise is the man that finds sanctity in himself. And just to be inclusive, it's wise is the person that finds sanctity in himself. And when the journey was over, I asked myself, was that a meme? Did I see that somewhere online? And I went on Google and I typed it and I couldn't find it anywhere. And I said, wow, that was profound. I ended up actually tattooing it. And then I just realized while Dan Engel was on stage yesterday that these parts that I've been working with, the inner workings, the inner family systems that I'm seeking to unburden myself from and come into harmony with, achieve exactly that. It's sanctity within self.
Man, so just to kind of put in with this, I've said this on this podcast, I don't know how many times, but one of my all-time favorite quotes is, the way of the warrior is to establish harmony. And with that being like acknowledged and in the present moment, harmony like blends the internal external worlds together. And like harmony within self produces harmony within another self, or another person, where we can come together and we can both feel this, and we can both build this vibration and this relationship and this connection. And like we get a group of people like we have here, man, 100 of us plus, like within harmony on a similar path and mission, and not a similar path of we got to make a lot of money or we got to be successful, but like for a real movement for planet Earth, dude. This whole community has been so phenomenal. It's been freaking incredible. Because I have to ask, how was your discussion with Dr. Dan afterwards? Because you two, the way you connected while you were on stage, was like, oh man, I can't wait to hear what they talk about.
Well, there was a part of me that I appreciate you sharing the way that you do. And I love that you speak on behalf of how powerful this group is. There is a lot of harmony that's establishing itself. And there are parts that are becoming parts and individuals, parts aka individuals that are becoming aware of one another, and the entire system is going to become more and more in harmony as this thing evolves. And I'm really looking forward to that.
So 3 months in.
3 months in,
This
yeah.
is so beautiful.
Yeah.
And the first time that we've ever been around each other in person.
Yeah.
And you can feel it.
Yeah.
You can feel it, man. We feel seen. We feel like we're able to see people. You know, we're able to perceive and receive the information around us in a very fluid, ongoing manner.
Right.
Bruce Lee talks about running water never runs stale, or flowing water never runs stale.
Right.
So you get this fluidity even in discussion and communication, and how we're able to bounce through topics and blend them together and learn something.
Yeah, agree. Well, that's a beautiful way to say it. And I guess med school took up so much of my time that I didn't get into any of the Bruce Lee quotes myself. But to answer your question from before, Dan Engel, like, I met him after and we chatted for a little bit, but I felt that having already established my rapport with him, there were some people that had some questions and they may not have the opportunity in the future to have that opportunity to speak with him. So I took a step back. I introduced myself and he said right away, man, we're going to definitely connect. Let's exchange contacts before we head home. So me showing up in Austin, I think a portion of it was to establish rapport with him and face to face.
The feelings have been mutual in that sense. He's a remarkably beautiful human being, and so different and unique, but attainable and familiar and personable and relatable. And I learn more about him every single time I'm around him. And so I've been around him twice now. And each experience, they were so completely different, but so aligned in the same like ideology and consistency. But yeah, man, he's hands down, he's one of my favorite parts about yesterday. His freaking knowledge, dude, and his genuine expression through it. It's just so powerful.
I felt that. I felt his compassion in every one of his words that he was sharing. And people prior to him going up were putting him way up there. And I'm like, that's what they do with doctors. But no, he showed up. And he didn't show up from a place of expectation. He was himself. And I can only imagine how my interpretation is he operates from a place of significant internal harmony. And he's very aware of his parts, and he operates from a place of unburdening where he's in doing so is able to be present for everyone else in the room. And every one of his words landed on me. I probably filled out 70% of what was discussed
Dude,
yesterday.
honestly,
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people felt that way too. I heard a lot of people talking afterwards how much they resonated with just his presence, man. That is a friggin' special thing.
Right. That goes to show how when you have done the work, you're able to show up for people and just beautifully share it, and people are ready to really consume that information. So don't undermine the work that needs to be done within us. Right now, we're all information seeking. We're seeking to, we are seeking, but we look forward to accumulating more and more knowledge. But what did he struggle with the most was the integration. And I hope we all take into account how necessary it is for anything that comes into our system's awareness, that we take the time to integrate it. We don't overwhelm the system in a way that it's overburdened and unacknowledged ultimately. And that integration process that he expressed in his, I don't know if he was joking or not, his depression and suicidal ideation was very real, very profound. But what happens in those moments of rock bottom? That's where the realizations happen. And if you let them happen and if you face them, if we continue to distract ourselves and look away, you're going to be in rock bottom and your body will eventually cope. But you don't want to let go and surrender. You don't want to let go and just trust the system. You want to trust from a place of harmony and actually having done the work. So
I like that.
yeah.
For people who don't know who Dr. Dan is, check him out. Google him. He just released a book on concussions, and he has a series of podcasts with Aubrey and a lot of other brilliant people out there. Somebody definitely worth looking into and following. So with this kind of inner work and journey, it seems to be an ongoing, endless cycle, right? Each moment we're around different people that may spark a certain thought, then we feel a certain thing, and like we're trying to like comprehend this while also engaging in discussion and being a person throughout our entire lifetime. So it doesn't feel like, especially with a person who's done a decent amount of deep inner work, where do you feel like we should be focusing when you get to a certain level of kind of acknowledging the ability or awareness that we are able to have? Because if it is never ending, where should we be focusing or kind of aiming to be able to function?
It's a great question. I'll share it as an example from my own life, which is probably the best place to start, where the realization happened, where I just got out of a relationship 2 months ago, of a beautifully challenging relationship that I still have a lot of things to work through. But in particular, I realized there were a lot of things that I had protected myself from, and this partner entered my life, and I didn't have to look at those anymore because she filled those voids for me. My worthiness, my replaceability, my sexual prowess, my attractiveness. And when she took that step back, or when we had to take that step back, it was mutual. All of a sudden, I was faced with these voids that she had been filling, and it terrified the fuck out of me. So I doubled down on should I actually be leaving this relationship? Should I be staying there? Should I, maybe I'll just leave medicine and I'll go live with her 7.5 hours away with no uncertainty. But I didn't realize what I was pushing myself into that reflection for. And I did it for 1.5 years, hyper protecting the relationship. But I realized that I was actually hyper protecting myself from these pains, these traumas that had been unacknowledged for years. And it took going deep into this system and working in particular with MDMA and my cousin, again, Tim. We did 3 sessions and I got to 7 of the most profound voids that my partner had inadvertently been filling, and I had been loving her out of fear for a large majority of the time. And by unburdening myself, by coming to harmony with that, I no longer needed to feel worth, the sense of replaceability, my sexual prowess through the eyes of anyone else, because I would know that I have it myself. And when you take this and apply it to your regular life now moving forward, by having unburdened yourself, anything external that happens ends up being a complement to your system as opposed to a necessity in order to fill that void that we have unacknowledged for as long as we had. And that is the power of this system, where you can now go out, live, and be, and not be on behalf of a burden that existed before, that had great intentions but protected us and is holding us back.
That's such a wonderful example and articulation of something that we all do and all go through in some degree until you get to a certain point. But even then, to any degree, those kinds of concepts still happen. And I talk in degrees a lot. So like when something makes me feel uncomfortable, even to a small degree, there's still discomfort there. It doesn't mean it's overwhelming and that's all I'm feeling and all I'm dealing with, but being able to acknowledge like there's something that may be out of place. And that's been, a sense of, deep mindfulness on the sensations in my body. But that's completely a different topic.
Maybe I can ask you a question. Since we've started speaking about
Okay.
this, have you identified any of the protectors that operate within your system?
Mm. Hmm. In a way, you have helped me recognize and just reflect on more so, like why I've been with certain women, and a lot of that's, I've talked about this before, but it's because like I've dated like beautiful women that I wasn't really that attracted to because other people thought they were attracted or attractive. And it's like I caught myself in that cycle multiple years back. And since then, slowly and progressively, my concept has kind of evolved into the more genuine that I'm able to become with myself, the more genuine that I'm able to become with the people around me. And with that, it's helped me like better choose who I would genuinely like to be in a relationship with. Friendships, even anything, like who would I genuinely like to be around and enjoy being around. And I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of where it's put me while we've been discussing about this.
I'm sure if we do a check-in in the next year or sooner, acknowledging protectors and parts within us, it's going to be coming to your limelight, and it won't be invasive. It's going to
Yeah.
be this beautiful tool that you're like, oh, there it is.
Dude,
Let me.
you've helped me see like the process a little bit better the past 2 days. And I'm not sure if it's fully happened yet, but I'm like, oh fuck, like I can apply that when I do recognize these disturbances or what seem like disturbances. So it's been really beautiful to learn from me the past 48 hours or however long. But this is a perfect segue, dude. Someone who's beginning, what should they be looking out for? Like with this kind of conscious therapy, right? Like how should they be maneuvering through this like new way of perceiving the world?
Again, great question, and I love to share that portion of this entire journey. Is that this is available to everyone right now, yesterday, tomorrow, whenever you decide to say, you know what, I'm going to look here. I would start by creating an inventory of what distractions exist in my life. What badges do I identify with maybe as an addiction? Do I call myself an anxious person? Am I depressed? Am I sad all the time? I challenge you to not use the word I anymore. Say a part of me is sad. A part of me feels anxious. And immediately you have absolved the system, your entire system, from being the pathology. It's just a part of you now. And there's suddenly a lot more compassion with the parts of you. And where I would go next with that is I would ask you to sit in a quiet place and just let thoughts run. Let thoughts run wild in your mind. And after a couple minutes, there's going to be a thought or two that steps forward. And I challenge you to ask it a question. Ask it if it has anything to show, if it has anything that it wants to share. But ask it from a place of pure compassion, pure curiosity, and no expectation outside of just a beautiful conversation. And now suddenly this part that may have been unacknowledged for 10, 15, 20 years, or 2 months, whatever it is seen. And you're going to get some very interesting responses. And there may be a part of you that says, what the heck am I doing interacting with a thought? But but there's so much beauty in how the system validates itself more and more. And the more trust that you establish with it and letting it know that you're there for it and you're going to be there for it, the rapport establishes itself, and the burden that it has on your system slowly softens back, and you can start identifying these parts within you more and more. And maybe after you're done with that, journal a little bit. What did I see? Was this a mechanism of protection that I have? Is this a tool that I use to manage my systems day by day? Is this a way that I extinguish the pain when it gets too big? And what was that pain? Is there a way that I can identify that now? Maybe I don't have the answer, and that's okay, but now I have a tool that's actually going to let me dive into me.
Hands down, was one of the most profoundly beautiful responses I have ever heard in discussion on this podcast, or just like literally as me as a person talking with people. And dude, every single word resonated so well and so deeply through my own perception, my own personal experiences, whether it's through meditation or with and through plant medicine. A part of me feels this, but a part of me feels this, but also a part of me kind of feels this way. Like, those have been recognized through thousands of hours of inner work. And it brings me to a beautiful freaking question, man. Because I do my best, bro, and I'm sure you can feel it, to properly choose the words that align with the moment and the movement of discussion and the pattern and the flow, and like which words best fit and align with this moment. I'm not going to express something the same way I would to you as I would with somebody else. I've learned that through coaching people and working with people for 8+ years. I'm not going to describe the same movement pattern to a soccer player as I would with someone who does lacrosse. Like, there's ways to like align with their pathway. How important do you feel like language really comes into play with all of this? The language in which we use with ourselves and in approaching these entities or extinguishers or whichever, man. Like, where does language really play a role?
Language is words. And what Eric Godse yesterday that was said yesterday to me that was so interesting, that he said, I'm always going to be restricted in the confines of the language that I use with myself. And with that in mind, how important would it be to you, to your system, to your confines, to have it as large as it can possibly be, with the tools that are as available as it could be, for the system to understand when you're speaking to it in a certain way. And I didn't really read thesauruses, but these words have just come from reading those books, that these self-help books have these beautiful ways of expressing themselves metaphorically. And our system loves to hear stories. And when you can be eloquent with yourself, when you can engage in language that your system understands and finds the rhythm and beauty in, they're as happy as you are.
That's so good. Go on, please proceed.
Oh, and it gets all that more exciting to share it with people. And a part of me is surprised at the acknowledgement of the words that I use day by day, because I guess I take it for granted. So thank you for expressing appreciation there.
Yeah, bro. I mean, namaste. Like, in a pure aspect, the divine within me, whichever aligns with that process, that part of being a person. Like, it feels you, man. It recognizes you. It feels a similar energy like within you, and it's fucking beautiful. It's cool.
Yeah.
And that's literally, someone asked me yesterday, like, what's been the best part about this whole weekend, or yesterday even. And I stopped for a moment. I took a deep breath. I was like, the community. To even be able to know that there were more people who align with these movement patterns are out there. And to know that, like, we aren't alone, and that we may not be as different as we think we are. And when you get into, like, understanding yourself in a deeper manner, then literally you begin and you become more able to understand the people around you. Like, when we deal with aggression and we know that when we are aggressive, we behave a certain way, and we see that in other people, just like the way that you saw the systems in other people, in you, and in you and other people, when wondering like what brought people to this moment. You begin to actually comprehend the species more and better, and you're able to broaden your perspective on like what's really happening here, like what's really going on. And it really does feel like those ways of perceiving are the ways that bring and blossom the gems that bring the proper results, dude. That like bring pure and proper healing for people. And for people being this person, myself included, man. It's so freaking cool what you're doing and the way you're going about it and how you're doing it. Thank you for putting in the freaking work, dude.
Thank you very much, man. I hope I represented internal family systems well.
Well, you represented yourself well, too.
Of course. So that may have been a protector part of me saying that. That doesn't want to let this system down. And
okay.
there's humility in
Dude,
realizing
you just helped me recognize a protector by saying that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's important. And I don't know if this is too much of a segue, but I want to mention that when I did mention that I loved my partner out of fear, when you do engage with this process and you come to understand why people protect themselves the way they do at the expense of some things that may land on you that hurts, their actions no longer land on you because you know that it's just part of their system. And suddenly you show that compassion. And then you may have been loving them out of fear, but now you love them out of love. And that's massive. Because you're coming from a place of harmony within yourself, compassion for their system, and appreciation actually for the gift that they gave you to, 1, get there, 2, spend their time and be present with you, and 3, just be a part of this journey with you. So I wanted to acknowledge her and not put her down for that. And that's not a protector. That's from a place of self.
Dude, Kaveh, you are a beautiful human being, man. Thank you so
Likewise,
much.
brother.
It is now 7 a.m. and we got up. I get up at 4:30 my time back home, 5:30 here. We did this at 6:30 in the morning. You ready for a freaking cold plunge?
I'm ready. Kyle's gonna bring it.
Kyle Kingsbury is about to bring it, and I'm so stoked. I'm so stoked to bond more with him and learned more from and with him. That dude is a freaking special human being.
Right.
He's so damn intelligent in like such like a comprehensive way. It's so cool.
Right. He actually mentioned something that was so powerful to me. He told me yesterday after I shared something that there's a pain in the end of this relationship, that he asked me to surrender. And I pondered on that for 12 hours. And this morning I realized that surrendering, it made me think of Braveheart, where William Wallace is about to get his head cut off. Surrendering without putting up the fight and the work and acknowledging where your true values lie is just surrendering, and him having said nothing. Surrendering and having stood up for yourself and for your systems is what he did when he screamed freedom. And that was an important conclusion to that reflection that Kyle had incited on me. So that's why I think this breath work is going to be a beautiful culmination this morning.
So I did an episode with Godzi a few days ago. We talked about like aligning with your daemon or your intuition, and how I believe it was Socrates, how like he aligned with his intuition, whatever felt the best that brought him to his death. And he did it with honor because he knew where he was where he should be. And it's interesting when we're able to align with whatever that may be, man, and follow that, and how comfortable we become being uncomfortable, because like we know, man, we motherfucking know we are where we should be. And we only discover that more and more as we do it. And as we meet people like you, man, it's just this beautiful reassurance, man. And it resonates and it feels beautiful and dope. It's the best.
Absolutely. it's an affirmation, because a reassurance is a protector. I say that with love,
Okay.
because you already know that you're on the right path, dude.
Word.
And when you know that from inside your system, it's just an affirmation of what you already know. Just keep trusting.
Love you, man.
Love you too.
Thank you.
No problem.
Let's freaking get in the water.
All right.
Barton Springs. Until next time, everybody. Thank you.